Wednesday, October 13th. Could I have roll call, please?
1 presiding, 10 present. 1 absent.
Thank you. So we have myself presiding, and we have 1 absent. Just let the record show that Commissioner Sorge is absent this evening. And at this time, I would ask Commissioner Thatcher to please start us out with the prayer and the pledge.
Almighty God, we implore you, look upon us and guide us this night as we make decisions which so greatly affect our community of Butte-Silver Bow. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we please you and best serve our fellow citizens. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Commissioner Thatcher. At this time, I would ask for any public comment on any items that are on tonight's agenda. Dr. Ray. Just give us your name and address for the record, please.
John W. Ray, 915 West Galena Street here in Butte. And what I want to speak about very quickly this evening, I've already sent you a couple of emails outlining what I'm going to say in greater detail. And I thought, instead of having it read into the record, which would take a while and you've already received it, just to sort of hit what I consider to be the highlights of what I hope will be addressed this evening when DEQ and EPA talk about the spill of dry cleaning fluid underneath Butte High, Unique Cleaners, and some of the apartment buildings around those 2 facilities. To me, the questions that need to be addressed are in 2 areas. One, what's the health threat? What's the health risk? Where are we with those spills? Secondly, and just as importantly, are process questions. That these spills originally took place in, 2009, and the public is just hearing about it, and I think local government may be just hearing about it 12 years later. Why did it take so long? Was there a problem? Was there a breakdown in the process? Because we had a similar situation a few months ago with regard to the Blacktail Creek Trail, where there wasn't exactly clear communication immediately about what was going forward. So what I hope is addressed this evening, and what I will be paying very close attention to, is 1, a description of exactly what happened, when, what was the time frame, and how did it happen. Secondly, what was spilled, and what are the harms of what was spilled. And I want to address that very briefly because it's important to remember in any of these environmental issues the health risks that are associated with the contaminants that are being released, and also the cost. And I want to mention, first off, even by the EPA's own estimates, cleaning up dry cleaning fluid, PCE, TCE, the cost of that at a minimum usually runs $400,000 to $500,000. It can go as high as $3 million to clean up. So assuming that this spill will be cleaned up, how much will it cost and who will pay? There's no real PRP that I can see there. Will EPA pay? Will the state pay? Oh, maybe you'll pay. But somebody's going to have to pay for it. Who will pay? Secondly, the materials that are spilled, those chemicals, can travel very fast. They've been traveling since 2009. Do we really know where they've gone? Are they continuing to travel? What's happening to them? Another very important point about the contaminants that were spilled is they are very resistant, according to the EPA itself, to natural breakdown and attenuation. What's the point? Well, you could say, well, okay, they occurred in 2009, they probably aren't very potent right now. That's not the case with PCE and TCE. They don't attenuate over time. Another thing, according to EPA, the vapors are very harmful. They're very persistent. They're very mobile. Do we really know at present what has been the effect of these vapors at Butte High, in those apartment buildings, for residents living in the area? This is particularly acute, and I get back to this point, how big is the spill? Has it been identified as to its boundaries and as to its parameters? Also, these chemicals, dry cleaning chemicals, are heavier than water, 60% heavier than water, which means what? They sink to the bottom, groundwater floats to the top. How do you clean that up? What effect will that have on the overall Superfund cleanup in the Butte area? Because this is in the middle of a Superfund site. All of those then are issues regarding the potential threats that are posed by this spill. And I'm looking forward this evening to the answers to these questions because I think they're important. It's also going to be important tonight to see what is said about the risks that these dry cleaning chemicals pose to the public. EPA has identified them as harmful, potentially cancer-causing, causing other kinds of harms. How do we know that no harm has occurred? How do we know that no harm will occur? What's the risk? I think this evening you're going to hear a presentation from the EPA's toxicologist who's involved in these kinds of risk things. I hope that in language that an ordinary person can understand, we're given information about whether there is or is not a risk. Based on what I've read in the newspaper and what I've heard, EPA and DEQ contends that the risk is minimal. Well, on what basis did they reach that conclusion? How much assurance can the public place in that somewhat rosy assessment? And so I'm looking forward to that. But now I want to turn briefly to the process area issue. This spill occurred in 2009, 12 years ago. We're just learning about it in the last, week, 2 weeks. My assumption is that local government has not been kept in the loop. Why did it take so long for the public to hear about this? It's a threat to the public. It's a threat to the public health. But why weren't we informed? And again, it's the same issue we've seen at Blacktail Creek with that spill there. Did somebody drop the ball? Was a mistake made? Is this normal operating procedure? And very importantly for you as local decision makers, are you satisfied with this? Do you want to say, well, when the agencies feel like telling us, that's cool. I'm sure they're protecting our interest, and if we don't need to know or they don't think we need to know, is that okay? I may be over-dramatizing it, but I think that's an important issue. My belief is that citizens have a right to know the threats that are being posed to them and what's being done to solve the problem. Most importantly, and I'll leave you with this, if a mistake was made, and I'm not thinking we need to spend a lot of time saying this person should be pillowed or hung or chastised, but overall, was a mistake made? Is there a problem? And if there is a problem, and this to me is key, what assurances that the public does the public have that this problem of notification, disclosure has been fixed, and that such a problem will not occur in the future? That's why it's so important to know why it occurred, because you can't fix it unless you know why. What has changed? What has been improved? Again, what confidence can we have that there aren't other environmental threats out there that we don't know about now and that we may learn about in 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 years? Public trust of government is not at its highest level. And so I hope that open, forthright, excuse me, candid information sharing occurs this evening. If a mistake was made, agencies should admit it, move forward, fix the problem, and show us how the problem has been fixed. We need to know what is happening. Government secrecy should not be tolerated. And so I get back to that process issue. Why did it take so long for what I think by any stretch of reasoning is a serious issue, an extensive issue? Why did it take so long to hear about it? And what will be done in the future that will give confidence to you and to the public that we're not going to see this occur in the future? Full disclosure should be the rule of all agencies of government on the federal, state, and local level. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ray. Any other comments from the audience on any item that's on the agenda? Ms. Perdue-Dolan?
I should know better. Good evening, my name is Cindy Perdue-Dolan. I live at 2810 Hannibal Street, and I'm speaking tonight for myself as a former commissioner and taxpayer here in Butte-Silver Bow. I just wanted to speak to Communication 2021-486. I agree with what Dr. Ray just said and wanted to add just a couple quick comments with regard to this communication and what the EPA is going to present tonight in the DEQ as well. I just wanted to mention that with regard to environmental justice and the fact that the EPA has been encouraging public dialogue with their virtual meetings and community engagement. It's important that they get to in-person and hybrid combination meetings as soon as possible, especially with what's just been happening at Butte High School and the Tripp and Dragstead apartments. There are a lot of people in that area that may not have computers and access to that virtual experience. And in that regard, encouraging the EPA to post those virtual meetings online as soon as possible. I came to find out just this morning that with the recording of those meetings, 7 recordings of those meetings and 7 meetings have not been posted to the EPA website. So further dialogue and timely fashion of those recordings has not happened. So people in Butte-Silver Bow do not know what's been happening for those that are not on those meetings in a monthly fashion. And that is not acceptable for me as a former commissioner. And I would encourage the EPA to get those online as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Any other comment on any item on this evening's agenda? All right, seeing none, move forward to the report of the chair. The only thing I have to report this evening is, if you didn't know already, Commissioner Sorch's mom passed away on Sunday night, and that's why he's not here, and just keep him and his family in your prayers. Thank you. Section 1, bid openings, public hearings, and/or presentations. We have a bid opening, item communication number 2021-452, Mark Neary, Public Works Director, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to schedule a bid opening for October 13th, 2021 for the Mercury Street rebuild. This project will rebuild Mercury Street from Shields to Arizona. Do we have proof of publication?
Madam Chair, there is proof of publication. It does appear to be in order.
Thank you. Director Neary, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, I'm Mark Neary, Public Works Director. We have 3 bids tonight. The first one is from R&S Johnson Construction, Anaconda, Montana.
And Madam Chair, there is bid security from a licensed surety company that does appear to be in order.
Thank you. Director Neary?
Madam Chair, the bid is $1,438,769.25. $1,438,769.25. Second bid is from H&H Contracting in Butte.
And Madam Chair, there is a bid bond from a licensed surety company that does appear to be in order.
Thank you. Director Neary?
Madam Chair, the total bid is $1,467,293.00. $1,467,293. The third bid is from Hoffman's R&M Services in Butte.
County Attorney Joyce?
Madam Chair, there is a bid bond in the amount of 10% from a licensed surety company that appears to be in order.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, the total is $1,344,000, $344,771. $1,344,771.
Okay, does that complete our bids?
Yes.
Commissioner Frederickson?
Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move this to the Public Works Department for a recommendation back to this body.
Do I hear a second? Second. We have a motion and a second to refer these three bids back to the Public Works Department, awaiting their response to this body. Is there anything on the question? Commissioner Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could we get an engineering estimate for the cost of this project?
Director Neary?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Anderson was $1.2 million.
1.2 million. Follow up, Anderson?
And with all of these exceeding that cost, is that something we're going to have to look into or put more money into, or is that something that we can still accomplish?
Madam Chair, we will go through the bids tomorrow and see if we can make sure that they're all right, and then we'll bring a recommendation back to this body.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Anything more on the question? Would everyone please vote? Anyone care to change their vote? Oh, well, I guess I better vote. Would the clerk please record the vote?
11 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Moving on to our presentations, we have three this evening. The very first one is communication number 2021-423, Tina Masters, Discovery House Program Director, requesting council commissioners for their concurrence to make a presentation on September 15th, 2021, per J.P. Gallagher's request, and we move that up to this date. So is Ms. Masters in the audience? There we are. Welcome. Nope, you had it right the first time. There you go.
There we go.
And could you give us your name, sir, and address for the record?
Hi, my name's Jay Grant. I am here representing CCCS and Discovery House.
Thank you.
I've been with CCCS for approximately 30 years. I just wrote down Just a few quick little things, just so you have some base knowledge of what Discovery House is, what CCCS's role is with Discovery House.
Okay.
And then I will turn it over to Tina Masters, who is the administrator and does the day-to-day stuff. Discovery House's existence began in July 1974 as a youth shelter by Sister Gil Mary Vaughn. She was a Dominican nun. And CCS became operator on April 1st, 2007. In August of 2008, CCCS requested the state to reclassify Discovery House from a shelter care facility to a duly licensed youth group home, as well as shelter care, with a supervision level of 4, with supportive services level 1, and it remains that designation today. To our knowledge, Discovery House is the only facility in southwest Montana of its nature. And also, if you are unfamiliar with its location, it is south of the courthouse in Anaconda, Montana. Okay? And with that information, I will now turn it over to Tina Masters, who is the administrator and basically lives at the facility and does the day-to-day stuff.
Thank you. Ms. Masters?
Thank you, Jay. We are licensed for 9 youth, ages 10 to 18, and we provide day-to-day care for them. We provide medical, dental. We outsource for therapeutic services. CCCS provides chemical dependency evaluations and also provides the counseling with that. Our youth are all at risk. They either come through the Department of Family Services or through juvenile probation. And we have a wonderful working relationship with Butte, and we are privileged to serve 19 out of 28 kids that we had last year came from Butte-Silver County. So generally we do a yearly request, and so this update is something that's new, but we are very passionate about helping kids through tragic times. Some of them come in with just the clothes on their back, and they are just in need of somebody to care. We had 2 little boys that just left yesterday. We had them for 5 months, and they were from Butte. And they were excited to go home, but they were also sad to leave because one little boy looked at me and he said, "I have made so many good memories here." So we really try to provide a home-like atmosphere. We serve meals as a family unit. They have chores. They have day-to-day things that they do. They all go to school. We oversee all of those things for them like a family would, but in the absence of a family being available, we're the next best step. So thank you for your consideration and for your continued support.
Thank you very much. Any questions for either Jake or Tina? Commissioner Mankins.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and just thank you, Discovery House, Tina Masters, and the partnership with CCS with Mr. Grant. I know that you do a special thing for kids that need it, and when you talk about family and that family atmosphere, it's very important to these kids to still get that and that responsibility that you give them and that opportunity to get back into society. So very much thankful for what you do for the youth. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you so much for coming this evening. We were anxiously awaiting your presentation since we missed you last time. And keep up the great work. I mean, it's the kind of thing that people don't really know about, and that's why we felt that it would be nice to have, we have some newer members on our council, and now we know a little bit more about Discovery House. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are we doing good on time for our next one? Yeah. Okay. So the next presentation is communication number 2021-486. Dana Barnicoat, U.S. EPA Region 8 Montana Community Involvement Coordinator, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to do a presentation on October 13th, 2021, regarding the potentially affected areas caused by a suspected solvent plume from Unique Cleaners located at 345 South Main Street, Butte, Montana. My understanding is this will be remotely produced up on the screens, and we can have our coordinated discussion. We can also ask questions, so await our IT department.
So is anybody joined the WebEx meeting? Do we have anybody from the EPA that has joined?
Too sticky, yeah.
They're in the lobby. What's that?
They're claiming they're waiting in the lobby. I just got off the phone with them.
Okay. They're coming up? They're in the lobby. So we want them to come to the meeting up in John. I don't know how to get them there. I don't know. This was sent out to them, unless they went into the other one. Or are they joining with audio, or are they not even in it? Not even in it, So how do we do? That's in the meeting. No. Well, did you read that? I don't have my glasses. If I can, it requires 2419. I can read it. No, it's not on. Okay.
All right.
Can you guys hear us? Nope. Can anybody from the EPA or other guests hear us?
This is Charlie Proctor, Jack can.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Chris Morrell can.
Okay. I don't know who's going to present on your side or how you want to conduct this, but looks like we're at this time ready to go, if you want to start. Is Dana the one going to lead the meeting for?
Dana was going to kick it off.
He does not appear to be on yet.
Give him a minute. Let me just contact him. I know he's trying to get in too, so let me just try to figure out what's going on.
Okay. To the guests joining us, can you put your cameras on so we can please see you? If you have a camera? Okay, I think we're just waiting for those that just joined. We're waiting for Dana, I believe, to join, be able to join the meeting.
And Dana and also our site assessment manager and site assessment section chief who can also speak to it. So I've just texted them real quick. Hopefully they can join soon. I know WebEx is a kind of a different platform than we're used to using, so
okay.
Hopefully they can figure out here soon. If not, I will kick it off, and then probably since we got Dan and Kevin on, kick to them, and then Charlie can jump in.
Okay, thank you.
I see Dana's name on it. Dana, do you want me to kick it off, or you, or?
Nope, I got it. We just need to get Victor on the line. If somebody could get in touch with him, he might have done the same thing that I did. I had to just log back off and log back in. So,
Dana, this is John from Butte-Silver IT. If you could turn your camera on, we'd appreciate it.
okay, yep, I sure will. There we go. Can you see me?
Not yet. There you go.
There we go. All right. Hey, thanks.
Hello, Dana.
All right. Good evening, Chief Executive Gallagher and Commissioners. I'm Dana Barnicoat, the Community Involvement Coordinator for the EPA for Region 8. I'd like to thank you all for having us here tonight. We're here to give you a briefing on the Butte Main Street plume, and we're also here with our partners from the Department of Environmental Quality. I'd like to ask our team, the EPA team, to introduce themselves, starting with Andrew Mutter. Andrew?
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Andrew Mutter. I'm the Director of Public Affairs here at EPA Region 8 out of Denver, Colorado.
Thank you, Andrew. Chris?
Chris Wardell, the Community Involvement Section Chief for EPA Region 8 in Denver.
All right, thanks, Chris. And then Victor, hopefully will be joining us soon. Is Joseph on the line? I don't see Joseph either. Charlie, Dr. Partridge.
Charlie Partridge. I'm a toxicologist and risk assessor, EPA Denver.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Partridge and everyone. We'd like to, we'll start with DEQ discussing the history of the site up to 2019. Then the EPA will discuss what happened since 2019 onward. So I ask that all members of the commission please hold your questions until both DEQ and EPA have presented, and then we'll do our best to answer your questions. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Kevin Stone with the Department of Environmental Quality, and he'll introduce his team, and we'll go from there. Kevin.
Hi, good evening. I want to thank Chief Executive Gallagher and the Council of Commissioners for having us tonight. My name is Kevin Stone. I'm a public information specialist at DEQ, and I primarily support our waste management and remediation division. And then I'll also ask Dan Norris to introduce himself here.
I'm Dan Norris, an environmental scientist with DEQ.
Thank you, Dan. So I'll kind of kick things off this evening by providing a little background on the site from the perspective of the state, and then kind of pass things off to Dan to provide a little bit more detail and discuss kind of the more contemporary focus from the state, and then we'll pass things off to EPA. So for some background on the site, in 2008, during excavation activities at the Butte High School football stadium, some groundwater was encountered as they were digging that site out for the new stadium. At that time, the Butte School District contracted consultants to conduct a groundwater evaluation, and that evaluation revealed low-level PCE concentrations for perchloroethylene, and the presence of trichloroethylene, or TCE, and other volatile organic compounds. PCE is a synthetic chemical that's widely used for dry cleaning of fabrics and for metal degreasing operations. PCE is a non-flammable, colorless liquid at room temperature, has a sharp, sweet odor, and under certain conditions, PCE can break down into other compounds like TCE. EQ first learned about this potential contamination when we received, through our enforcement program, a complaint in 2009 that identified a possible source of chlorinated solvent. The complaint process is DEQ's mechanism for receiving reports of potential pollution or contamination. DEQ enforcement referred some preliminary investigation and referred the complaint investigation information to DEQ's groundwater remediation program, and that happened in September of 2009. Our enforcement program eventually closed that complaint in 2011. So the history of the site with our groundwater remediation program is that that program looked at the available data that was available from that investigation that the school district consultants performed, and prioritized this site based on risk to human health. The site at that time was determined to be a medium priority based on a low level of risk. The available data indicated that groundwater concentrations of PCE exceeded the DEQ 7 standard, or our state standard, which is based on being protective of a drinking water pathway. So the greatest risk at a site like this would be that people are consuming or drinking water, contaminated groundwater. And the case in this area is that the public is not drinking that water, and that folks are on city water system. So that was really the driver behind that initial prioritization based on an evaluation that there was a low risk human health. I'll also add that while exceeding the state standards, these concentrations are still considered to be low. Again, that kind of that formed the basis for our initial evaluation of the site. Additionally, based on what DEQ knew in 2009 about vapor intrusion, or the risk that those contaminants could, or that vapors from those contaminants could kind of rise up from the groundwater through soil and impact above ground buildings. And looking at other sites in Montana, the site would still not believe to rank as a high-risk site based on that vapor intrusion pathway. In the intervening years, the EQ has looked for ways to gather additional information in order to confirm the low level of risk. The EQ does not have a dedicated funding mechanism for chlorinated solvent sites, or these, dry cleaner related contamination, and there was no clearly identified responsible party. That made it difficult to identify pathways for additional funding to continue assessment of contamination. For example, DEQ explored options through Montana's Water Quality Act, as well as some other pathways for funding to do additional investigation, were ultimately not successful in securing those resources. Throughout the years, we've looked to continually kind of assess the priority at this site, in addition to seeking funding. And we've been in regular contact with EPA over the years about this site. Things kind of changed and allowed us to move forward a little bit, which Dan is going to talk about next. I'll reiterate that, our goal over these years has been to identify the resources to be able to do some additional investigation at the site. And Dan's going to talk a little bit about how that persistent effort to identify those resources is ultimately led to securing some resources through the EPA. With that, I'm going to pass things off to Dan, and let me know as we kind of wrap up these briefings if you have any questions on the background of the site. So again, thank you, and with that, I'll hand things over to Dan.
Thank you, Kevin. And again, I'm Dan Norris, an environmental scientist with Montana DEQ. So as Kevin pointed out, vapor intrusion is kind of an evolving science that we've been learning more about over the years. And along with that, DEQ has continued to stay on top of the science of vapor intrusion over the years, including completion of a Montana background air study in 2012. And then in 2016, DEQ supported an EPA proposed rule change that would allow the use of federal resources for sites that have potential vapor intrusion issues. So in 2017, EPA finalized that rule change, which allowed the use of vapor intrusion to be a consideration under the federal Superfund law. And this really opened the opportunity for federal funding for evaluation of sites where there's potential for vapor intrusion. DEQ has worked on several sites with significant vapor intrusion issues over the years, such as Billings PCE site, Whitefish solvent site, and several others. And those were considered high priority based on conditions at those sites, very high groundwater contamination concentrations, or a complete pathway into the buildings. Just to kind of set a little bit of background here with the conditions at the Butte solvent plume, I want to just kind of cover, in DEQ's experience at these chlorinated solvent sites, typically it's a release rather than a spill. A spill typically implies kind of a one large one-time incident, whereas most of the chlorinated solvent issues that we deal with, it's typically very small releases over time. So there will be either a leaking tank or some leaking plumbing or leaks in a sewer system that allow some of those contaminants to get out. And it's typically low levels, but over time, it really doesn't take but a very small amount of chlorinated solvents to create a plume. So that's sort of what we understand the Butte solvent plume to be. So along with that, as we learned more about vapor intrusion over the years, and we had the opportunity to request federal resources with that rule change, in 2019, DEQ requested that EPA take a closer look at the conditions of the site, just to double check and ensure that our assumptions were correct, that the risk is minimal. So DEQ requested that EPA conduct what's called a preliminary assessment to evaluate the conditions at the site. And with that, I will turn it over to Victor Katelupper with EPA.
Good evening. I'm Victor Katelupper. I'm the team leader for the Region 8 Site Assessment Program at EPA. And I'm going to give you a quick overview of the Site Assessment Program. It's one that people typically don't know a lot about. The Circle Site Assessment Program is really a program that does screening of facilities, abandoned facilities, determine if there's a hazardous waste being stored or being released at that site, and is there potential for those hazardous materials to cause a risk to either the public health of the environment. Give you some context, the site assessment group looks at a large number of sites throughout the year, and only a handful of those sites turn out to be of concern. If there is a site we do identify with a concern, next part of the program does, it looks at what environmental programs are available to address that concern and refer those programs. It could be a state program, it could be an EPA program, emergency response, it could be brownfields type program, or it could be over inside to the national priorities list. What we're doing here at the Butte site is a preliminary assessment, which is really an initial assessment that we do in the site assessment program. Typically in that phase of the project, we collect a very limited amount of data. Typically, we collect data that's reports, existing samples, existing information out there. We can sometimes collect some actual environmental samples that we send to the lab, but it's not typical. With that overview of the program, I was going to hand it off to Joseph Chisholm, who's the site assessment manager, or I should say, sorry about that. Led the assessment of this project.
Good evening. Okay, so I conducted the preliminary assessment earlier this year, and we determined that there was most likely a solvent plume extending under South Main Street in Butte, and that plume would probably extend under a portion of the Butte High School and the adjacent apartment building, and potentially a couple of businesses that are along Main Street. We believe that this plume is in the shallow water aquifer, so it's not impacting any drinking water. And due to the institutional controls, due to the Superfund site, there would be no impacts to any wells within the Butte area. Our next steps is that we do a site investigation to completely characterize this plume and to determine if there's any vapor intrusion within the school or the apartment building or any of those structures. In the immediate future, we're planning on doing a sampling event within the school and the apartment building to determine if there are any exposures that are currently happening to any residents or students and staff. With that, I'm going to turn it over to John Partridge to talk about the chemicals itself.
Yes, thank you. So I'm Charlie Partridge, toxicologist for the region. And, I know it's difficult when you see these results to really, try to understand exactly what's going on, and what the risk might be. I want to, emphasize, just a couple of things, right now, this isn't related to the Superfund, the mining related Superfund. We think it's, something from, maybe industrial activity in the area. And so, like the state had said a little bit earlier, looking at the results, the highest results that we see in the groundwater is 12 micrograms per deciliter. And, for those of you, who don't deal with this every day, that probably doesn't mean a whole lot to you. But when you look at it in the context of other sites that you see, it does, present a low level of risk. And, we have to caveat this, when I'm talking about risk, I'm talking about what the risk was in 2009, because the 2009 data is really the only data we have, so I have to put that in context. But, if we look at the concentrations that we have, the levels would be quite low. When I say quite low, what does that mean? Instead of throwing out, a bunch of scientific terms, if you exposed the whole population of Montana, which is about, let's round it up, about 1.5 million, and they were exposed to these levels of chemicals in the groundwater in a home situation, in a residence situation, you would only, over about a 20-year period, you would only see a couple of additional cancers, somewhere between 2 to 6 probably additional cancers across that whole 1.5 million populations. You probably have a higher risk of cancer from eating a chili cheese dog once a week for that same time period. Your risk of cancer from that activity would be much higher than being exposed to these low levels of vapors in a building. But we realize, that there are some data gaps. It's based upon the 2009. And it's also, very close to the school and it's close to the apartment building. So, working with Victor and Joseph, the process is once we kind of do the preliminary assessment, when we see that there might be a possibility, then we do a more extensive investigation because we want to be thorough and make sure that we're transparent in our processes and see exactly, we want to confirm that initial assumption that was made in 2009 and again with the preliminary assessment that it is a truly low-risk exposure situation. And so that's really the purpose of having, these two sampling events, one in the immediate future, like Joseph mentioned, that's to, just confirm that we're not having a exposure situation occurring right in the school, in the immediate time frame. And then we'll do a more thorough investigation, probably over the Christmas holidays, just working with the school district, working out logistics when it works best for them, to add a little bit more sampling data to determine, to also confirm, that, hey, what we determined, from the 2009 data and also from the preliminary assessment, those assumptions still hold, and it is still a low-risk situation. And based upon, the levels we're seeing here, it definitely wouldn't rise to a circular remediation type of situation. And to put this into context, just in case you're familiar with some of the other solvent plumes in Montana, in Billings, there's a solvent plume that has similar chlorinated solvents. Their levels in the groundwater range from orders of magnitude higher, 70 to 700. In those situations, we did identify, that there is need for some sort of remediation. And so, I kind of leave it like that. I didn't want to get too technical, so hopefully I kind of put it a little bit in perspective, and, I think we can probably open it up to questions.
And Dr. Partridge, could you maybe talk a little bit about how that sort of risk is calculated, and that's based on the knowledge we have of from 2009 of the groundwater concentrations that you're describing as kind of a worst case scenario where there was in fact a vapor intrusion pathway, and that we're not sure that that's the case.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. We take the data that we have and we put it into a computer model, and it allows us to look at the worst case situation. If you had these concentrations in the groundwater, and the groundwater is at this depth, what would be the worst case situation where you would have vapor intruding into the living spaces or the working spaces of a building? And so, that's really, the context that we're looking at, the risk that I'm presenting now, is really kind of the worst case situation, where like you had a building that didn't have a slab, that it was just a dirt basement, then you would get a lot of vapors, into the living spaces. But when you have foundations and other HVAC type systems, then that definitely lowers the amount of vapors that can intrude into those type of spaces.
No, yep.
Okay, I guess at this time we should go ahead and open it up for questions.
Hi, this is Cindy Shaw. I'm actually presiding tonight. Can you all hear me? All right. So I would ask for any questions from council members to any of these gentlemen that are here tonight. Commissioner Shea and then Commissioner O'Neill. You have to get up closer, Michelle. We've got our microphones kind of all over the place. We'll make it work. Thank you all for being here tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. This is Commissioner Shea, representing District 2 speaking. My biggest question is, why such a long arc of Butte-Silver finding out? Or at least for this council, maybe there are people that knew about this, and maybe that question is for more than just you. But that is the biggest question that's weighing on my mind, is why are we just hearing about it? And I do understand the wheels of government agencies turn slow. So if you could answer that for me, thank you.
Thank you, Councilperson Shea. That's, certainly a fair question, and, I appreciate your kind of acknowledgement that sometimes things do move slow, and, at DEQ, we see this ultimately as a success in that we were eventually able to secure the resources for this additional site assessment. As we kind of reflect at this milestone and reflect on the process, we acknowledge that there could have been more done as far as communication over the years. That's something that's an ever-increasing focus at our agency. We're hearing about that from, the Gianforte administration, our agency director, that it's important to be proactive in our outreach, and that's something that we'll own in this case that we think could have been done better. As we manage a lot of sites and are constantly looking to evaluate risk and priorities, that can be a difficult needle to thread. As we've seen in this case, it's difficult to kind of inform without causing undue concern. And I just kind of want to assure the folks in Butte and to this council that, certainly in a case where we were concerned of a medium or, anything below a low level of evaluated risk, you would have certainly heard from us sooner. But, to your point, that's something we'll continue to make sure that we strive to do better in that communication. And, we know there was some interaction. Our records aren't great from 2008, 2009 period. There was some interactions, but we're not looking to shift blame or point fingers at anyone. We recognize that responsibility is ours, and we want to do better.
Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A comment before my question, I guess. You mentioned risk and priorities. The risk between a high school and an apartment building, that's concerning to me. Waiting for 12 years. So your risk and priorities, I have no idea. We'd have to go into that depth. I just want to let that. It's interesting that you say that. My question is, who's liable for this? Like, whose fault is this? Why is it contaminated? Like, who do you? I know we're not looking to point the finger here. We have to look and make sure this gets cleaned up. But who? Where does this come from? Whose fault is it to start with? That's my first question.
I can say at DEQ, our initial investigation that was done by the enforcement program in 2009 identified unique cleaners as a potential or maybe suspected source area. I think we've learned over the years that there's additionally was at one time another operating dry cleaning facility in the general area, as well as other businesses that could have been using solvents as degreasers. So our level of confidence is, we never identified a clear responsible party. That's something I don't know whether EPA will be At this stage, I think everyone's focus is really on confirming that there are assumptions, that there are not, human health risks, and kind of moving forward is the highest priority on our end.
Okay, thank you. Kind of follow up.
Follow up, Commissioner O'Neill.
So, thank you for that as well. I guess, when we hear all this, now what? As a kid with, or I don't know what you call me, I'm raising a family here. That's where I plan on my kids going to school. I mean, where's the concern at? Where's the, obviously we're 12 years later on addressing this, and neither who the blame is, that doesn't matter, but now we do another 12 years, and then, oh shucks, what do we do now? I mean, who's liable, who has to pay? I'd like to know that too. Does Butte-Silver have to pay? Do you go back to unique cleaners or the other, are they liable for that? I mean, obviously, somebody the finger has to get pointed somewhere where this started. And the citizens of Butte, we need to know that. It keeps bringing up the Superfund. I wanted to, this would be its own separate Superfund versus the Superfund we're already dealing with? Because when you say Superfund, to me, it's the Superfund of the mine, not this dry cleaning incident in the middle of the town. So I think I threw a lot of questions out there. I hope that helps, but very concerning. This is the first time I've heard about it was today. So highly confused on where it goes, and hopefully it's not another 12 years to come back to our town to know. I mean, anyways, carry on with whatever question you caught on there, okay? My frustration of where you answer whatever one you ever want to. I mean, we'll go from there.
Hey, this is Chris Woodhouse, and maybe I can get over to Charlie with Victor, but I think to kind of have some nuances here on where this is within Superfund and CERCLA and site assessment, and where we're going. So now that we have the PA and we're doing the site investigation, that'll take us down a path to identify sources, what risk, if any, what pathways, if any, exist, if any exist at all, and current risks. So, I'm not the expert, I just kind of speak in a very broad context here, and more layman terms that I understand, but maybe Charlie or Victor can kind of jump in and answer and make us some more detail some of the very great questions you just asked.
Yeah, Victor can maybe add on to that, and then I'll kind of talk about risk a little bit more.
All right. At this point, it's the EPA is funding these assessments, and we do this pretty typically to look at sites that potentially could cause some human health or environmental risk. At this point, we don't really know what the source is. We don't have a lot of answers. If there is a risk, we have some early data that shows that there's not a risk, but that's also based on modeling. We want to be able to verify this with actual indoor air data to confirm that our models and assumptions are correct. So at this point, we can't really look to say, is this a Superfund site? Is this a non-issue? Likely, from everything we've seen, it's a very low risk site. But what our program does is once we've done these initial assessments, collect some data, and there's determined to be a need at the site for some kind of remediation, we look closely at what our options are, and really the last resort is designating a new site as a Superfund site. There's lots of environmental type cleanup programs that can be used to address this. We haven't really, until we identify the source, we haven't really done any background and shown any of those parties that are responsible for releasing this contamination, if it is a problem. Are they still liable? If not, things I did want to mention too is for these types of problems, these vapor intrusion problems, there's some quick remedies that can be put in place. A vapor mitigation system is fairly inexpensive that can be done to reduce risk in the interim if there is a groundwater cleanup needed or just don't know. Those are all assumptions and guesses at this point. Do you want to add to that, Charlie?
Yeah, and the kind of the remedy, the quick and easy remedy that Victor mentioned, it's essentially like radon, where you're just pulling air from below the slab and venting it out, so that the vapor doesn't have a possibility to intrude to the living space and thus reducing risk. When I'm talking about risk, when we calculate risk for these type of chemicals, it's assuming a chronic exposure, which is essentially a 25-year exposure. So when we say, to show health effects, you would need to be exposed, to these levels for approximately 25 years in a residential scenario. In a residential scenario is we assume you're in the house 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 350 days a year. And so it takes a fairly long exposure to see health effects to these chemicals. Now, for context, students at the high school, they're there maybe 4 or 5 years, 5 days a week, 10 hours a day. The levels that we're seeing, in the groundwater, you just wouldn't see any health effects. If the levels that we see in 2009 are, still current, to a student, you wouldn't really expect to see any kind of health effects. They're just not there over that long duration that these type of chemicals have to have in order to show adverse health effects. Now, the faculty and staff, who may, work on that same campus, for 20, 30 years, that's kind of the exposure that, you would think about possibly having health effects. But I want to reiterate again, at the levels that we're seeing, we really don't anticipate, there to be those adverse health effects. And, with this data gathering effort, we'll be able to, really confirm, our assumptions and to, add to the data that we have, and then we can create a more refined scenario where we can calculate the risk a little bit better.
Commissioner Thatcher and then Commissioner Reardon. Oh. Okay.
So, Councilman, you mentioned the 12 years. We acknowledge that, yes, we did not do a good job of communicating. Earlier this evening, probably about 6 o'clock, I was on a video conference with the acting regional administrator, Deb Thomas. And I explained to her where we are with this and our meeting this evening. And again, as I told Mr. Gallagher last week, when we had the initial briefing, that we are going to move as fast as science is going to allow us to address this issue. Your point about 12 more years, this is on the leadership's radar. Our Superfund Emergency Management Division Director, Betsy Smearing, is being briefed on it. The team here is working diligently to pull that together. Joseph is going to be doing the sampling. And once we have the data, we are committed to coming back and providing that data both to the council, the community, the media, school districts, etc. So we understand the urgency on this. We understand our high school students and faculty members and people living in that general vicinity there. So I just want to reassure the council that we are addressing this in the most expeditious and science-focused manner. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you. A couple more questions from council members. Commissioner. Okay. Commissioner Reardon?
Great. Thanks, Andrew. And then the other thing too is what we try to do is make sure that we're reaching out. Again, we said we briefed the Chief Executive Gallagher, the school superintendent, and the principal of Butte High. And we're also going to be working hard on making sure that we do a lot of community outreach to keep the community informed of the steps moving forward. We're going to be briefing, we're going to have community discussions tomorrow night It'll be virtual, so hopefully we'll have a high attendance there. And then the school superintendent asked us to brief our school board on Monday. And then we're going to be working with DEQ on developing joint fact sheets to make sure that we're communicating risks to the citizens of Butte.
Okay, we have another question, Commissioner Reardon.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is John Reardon, and I'm the Commissioner in District 8. As you can see, I'm older. I just happen to have some information for you guys. I was raised in that neighborhood on Colorado Street and Main Street, down from the MMI. I used to go up that street every day and actually attended Butte High School. You could smell those fumes then. That's not irrelevant to what we're talking about. But you mentioned about slab basements and about dirt basements, and I can give you a basic percentile in that area. I would say that 98% of those basements are dirt, except for the large structure of the trip and drag, and also when the high school was built. So I think that the slab shouldn't really come into effect here with those homes that are around, because I would bet a paycheck or whatever that these basements are dirt. Another thing that concerned me is, as long as we're on the subject, is the fact I know we're dealing with a particular cleaning agency or business, is the fact that right up the street, there was another one located where the current post office is built for the U.S. Postal Service, and another one over the street uptown. I'll come with the location here, I kind of, but anyway, I guess that, you know, with this deal that we're dealing with now, should we pay attention to these locations that have been using this chemical over a period of years, and maybe look at them as long as we're doing this, and if there are issues, maybe piece them together. And I think that might be something to consider. Another thing I'm going to leave you with, in your presentation, and I don't think people really understand, you talked about the solvent being dispersed. I never really caught on what the process was there. Was this, in earlier days, was the solvent just dumped into the ground? Was it run through the sewer, through, say, a treatment plant? Or basically, are there regulations in place now, obviously, with the problems that you guys have, is, I think there's a lot of questions here about where this stuff went in the earlier years, and the contamination that it might, how it might affect the people. And I'm not being facetious to the gentleman that made the comment about the chili dogs or the six, but we do have 1.5 million people. If we happen to lose 5 or 6 people, I think that's 5 or 6 people too much because of this scenario that we have. Thank you.
Commissioner Fisher.
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, we have one more question coming up from Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chairman Shaw. My name is Jim Fisher. I represent District 6 in Butte-Silver County. And I'm going to be a little tougher on you guys than most are, because that's the way I am. I'd like to thank you for being here, but you're not here. That's real disappointing and frustrating to me that at least 1 or 2 of you couldn't show up for a council meeting tonight and meet face to face where we could visit a little further about this. The other thing is Butte-Silver and the DEQ and EPA, in my mind only, in my opinion, has not been treated fairly. We've been misled many a times. Montana Pole side, drainage up on the North Hill. I just feel that we heard a presentation tonight that was pretty much all visited amongst your people, and I think that it'd be better if someone would show up here and answer the questions that have been asked. Earlier in the meeting tonight, Dr. John Ray had a ton of questions, and it was pretty tough for him to get them answered when we were doing this. And we also had a former representative here, Ms. Purdue Dolan, and she stated that a lot of the information from the meetings on Zoom are not being recorded on the EPA site. So I thank you for your information, and I hate to be tough on you, but I wish show up here so we have a good visit. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. You know, we wish we could be there and we would, you know, due to COVID or the restrictions that we have, it's just, our hands are tied right now. We're doing the best we can do, and also, talking about the meetings that we have, we do record them and we're getting them on. Did someone else, first, did you have something you were gonna say?
Oh, thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, I'll just add, you know, at DEQ, we're not under some of those same travel restrictions. I think we can certainly find ways to make ourselves available on the ground in the community, and we'll work with, you know, our partners there at the council and you know, members of your community to find the right opportunities to do that. We're planning on, as Dana mentioned, meeting with the school board next week, and we'll talk with them about ways that we can support them in their outreach to parents. And if there are opportunities there and they think that it would be helpful to have some DEQ staff in person to assist them in some of that outreach, we'll be happy to do that.
Thank you very much. We have one more question from Commissioner Shea, and then we'll let you wrap it up if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry I meant to ask this question the first time. Kevin Stone, I believe you had said that the DEQ had received a complaint in 2009 regarding this site. Is that right?
That's correct.
Can you tell me who filed that complaint?
And I don't want complaint to sound like a totally pejorative term. That's what we would call any time we get sort of a report. And that information was provided by the school district's consultant, WET, which is a local environmental consulting business there in Butte. They performed the evaluation for the school districts, and then they passed off that information that they got during doing that groundwater evaluation. They provided that to DEQ.
Okay, I did see that in the report, so thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question.
One last question, Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Shaw. So in the part of the permitting process of the, so when Butte High built the stadium, they needed a permit, obviously, so that had been, and obviously, when you live in one of the biggest, largest Superfund sites in the country, environmental is a big thing, so they would have had to, how did they get a permit to keep going if there was a complaint in 2009? Can you guys answer that for me? And you don't have to. I want one thing clear too here is like you guys are on the front line now, getting all this thrown at you, and obviously we also need you too. You're the DEQ, that you work with the EPA. You guys are obviously the saviors of cleaning this mess up. So we're throwing punches at all you guys, at least I am, because I want some answers. But how in God's name does the stadium get built if there's an issue like this? How does that even pass through? Because it wasn't a concern then, but it is now. So can you help me out on that one?
Yeah, I'll do what I can here. I don't want to overspeak based on my limited knowledge of both the investigation or the evaluation that the consultant did, or kind of everything that DEQ looked into at that time. My understanding is that the groundwater evaluation itself was not related to contamination. That information was a byproduct of the evaluation where they were looking at groundwater movement. And then again, when we sort of evaluated that information, our primary concern was, would have been around consumption of contaminated drinking water. And in this case, that pathway was not the case. So I can't really speak to whether we looked at the construction or what stage the construction was in at the time we found out about it, but I'm not aware in our records, I haven't seen anything that was a concern related to contamination as it relates to, say, the ongoing construction.
Just a follow-up.
Follow-up?
Not a question, just
Yep.
mainly a comment and concern. So if you're sitting on in the football field, you can look, whatever, in two different directions and see that there was a dry cleaners there that have been there for a long time. So in 2009, when this was discovered, the chemicals or whatever, and it related to that, I'm still just puzzled to think that if, in the science of whatever, that you wouldn't think that this would later not be a concern, and at that time that it wasn't like something needed to happen. Because anyways, I'm just gonna leave it at that, and maybe something was, but we just don't know, but as of today, it's being blindsided, and again, the DEQ and all the permits that you have to go through to get that process moving. Again, you don't even need to be a scientist or smart at all to even look up and say, there's one there, there's one there, this is coming from here. Anyway, that's my frustration. I definitely appreciate what you guys are doing, and find out where it came from and help us fix this, please. That's what we need to make that happen. Thank you.
Commissioner Bankins has a question.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Mr. Stone, is it Kevin Stone, you said something about the groundwater when you were talking just now with Commissioner O'Neill. But I know stating back from when Joseph was talking, he said, we believe it's not in the drinking water. We believe it's not. So how do we reassure, and that was after Victor talked a little bit about it also, how do we reassure the public that it's not? I've been an 11-year employee of the school district sitting in that building for 11, 12 years. So I just don't know when he uses the words, we believe it's not in the drinking water, I quote from Joseph. So how do we reassure again the public and the student it's not in the drinking water?
We're having a really hard time hearing you.
So I can help you with that. This is Gala, Chief Executive. His question was that Joseph said they believed that it was not in the drinking water. He was asking, how can you reassure the parents at the high school and in the apartment building that it is not in the drinking water? That was his question.
Charlie, I'd like to defer to you. You know more about the institutional controls than I do.
Yeah, so due to the institutional controls, related to the underground mine flooding, related to the Superfund, there are institutional controls and ordinances in place where private wells cannot be used within this area, and so we know that everybody in this area is on city water. And so that it's not being, we know, if you're drinking city water, you're fine, it's coming from the city water is coming from a different source. The only risk to consumption of the drinking water would be if somebody had a private well in the area and that was their main source of drinking water, but we know due to the ordinance that, that's no longer allowed.
Commissioner Shaw, then Commissioner Anderson, then Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Can you hear me all right? I had a question on this. You mentioned an aquifer a couple times over there. How large is this aquifer? And I know that just south of this area a little bit, there is some quite a bit of land, some wildlife habitat along the interstate there, a few miles down, and also a lot of other residences that I know that some of them do have wells on the property, not mainly for their own consumption, but for livestock that they have. what are the implications on that? And are you mapping the aquifer? And something I read this, PCE is a lot heavier than water, so it would sink to the bottom. And it seems to me like if it did get into the groundwater, that it would just kind of move an awful lot faster, and depending on the depths of these wells, it could be easily throughout a lot larger area than just the ground So thank you, if anybody has any information on that.
Yeah, so PCE is fairly well documented in the study chemical. This is something that we are going to try and identify just how large the plume is and where it has moved to over time. And we will take into consideration the size of the shallow water aquifer and really try to determine that through our investigation.
Eric Hassel, would you like to come forward and give us your take on the groundwater issue? Thank you.
Chairman Shaw, members of the council, thanks for calling me up. For the record, I'm Eric Hassler. I'm the director of the Department of Reclamation and Environmental Services. And we'd just kind of like to talk to in a little bit more in regards to the ICs that are in place. In 1995, we adopted an ordinance in Butte that if you were within 300 feet of a municipal main, you had to hook up and abandon your well. We did a search of GWIC, which is the well log for the state of Montana, and there are no active wells within the immediate vicinity of Butte High and the neighborhoods there that are for any other use other than monitoring. So we are pretty confident that there is not a drinking exposure to this. In regards to when this comes to light, I was in a completely different role at that time, but I do remember anecdotal discussions about this discovery in '09. I remember that we did some work at Butte-Silver to try to help mitigate it as well. So we've heard of it before, but not in great detail that I'm aware of. But I do remember in my career that this was brought to our attention at one point in time.
Okay.
So if you have any other further questions, I'd gladly answer in my capacity.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Eric. Commissioner O'Neill, did you want to have a?
No, I was.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right. I believe that we've had a full line of, thank you, Chief Executive Cindy Shaw here. I don't know if you can see me or not, but I think we're done with the questioning. And if you'd like to give us a final, comment or whatever before you leave, we sure do appreciate your being here. We understand a lot of reasons for not coming in person, and that's fine. We're just glad to have your attention, and we have your attention. So thank you very much.
Before I'll close it up for EPA, but I want to ask the team and Montana DEQ, any last comments before I close it up for this presentation for us?
One last thing, I want to reiterate that we're, grateful for the resources that EPA is stepping in with here for this site investment. Their site assessment. It's been a long haul for DE2 to get to this stage, and we're glad that this is moving forward. We appreciate the coordination that they provided with us, to this stage, and we look forward to working with them both to do outreach in the community, to be involved as we look at what the next steps are for sampling, for interpreting those results, all of that. They've been really great to work with, and it's appreciated. It's a benefit to the state of Montana that they're able to provide.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Again, I'm Andrew Wood, I'm the Director of Public Affairs here for EPA Region 8. I want to thank the council and everyone in attendance for this opportunity to give you an update on this site. Acknowledge at the beginning, we could have done a better job of communicating, and we will, my commitment as Director of Communications here, we will do the best that we can moving forward. I want to address Councilmember Fisher, District 6, your comment about being a person. Our default is to be a person. That's where we know that interaction is absolutely critical. We want to be there. Cindy calls me all the time, Dr. Ray sends us notes. So we are interacting as best we can from a distance. It's unfortunate that the agency does have travel restrictions in place that preclude us from being up there. But again, that is our default to be there. We've got Dana Barnacote. I talk to Chris and Dana all the time. Get out into the community as soon as we can and once the travel restrictions are lifted. So, I wish I could say more on that, but at this point I can't. But once the travel restrictions are lifted, you'll see us up in the again. Again, I want to thank everyone for this opportunity. My contact information is out there. Chris Bordeaux is out there. Dana Barnacote is out there. If you ever have any questions, please feel free to give us a call. We want to provide the information. As I told Chief Executive Gallagher the other day, my commitment to be transparent. I will continue to ensure leadership is informed. I speak with Deb Thomas numerous times a day and Betsy Smith as well. This is a high priority for us. Joseph and Victor will move out and we'll do the best they can with sampling. And once we get the information, we'll be back. Continue to engage. So again, I want to thank everyone for this opportunity. And I will turn it back over to the council.
Thank you very much. JP, maybe you can say something.
Thanks for being with us today. This is JP Gallagher, Chief Executive, and so we'll sign off and continue on with our council meeting.
Thank you. Okay. Moving right along here, our next item on the agenda is a presentation. This is the final one, Communication 2021-490. Karen Burns, Community Development Director, requesting Council Commissioners concurrence for 10 of the recipients of the 2020-2021 Economic Mill Levy monies to give a presentation this evening, Wednesday, October 13th. And there was a communication that went out that was asking, requesting those organizations that received monies during that last economic development mill levy funding to give this presentation this evening, and we are looking forward to that. So without further ado, I will begin with Butte Mule Tours. Mr. Ackerman, you're first. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. On the Butte Mule Tours, our initial startup costs were about $22,500. The biggest cost was, of course, buying the Kawasaki Mule from Stax, and we spent all that money locally, including the website, our insurance, advertising, and of course my Butte-Silver Bowl license. The mill levy grant that we got was for $5,800, so that did help. Now we did do about 406, so far we've did about 465 tours and generated about $11,000 in monies. Now of that $11,000, right now about $1,700, and I suspect I'm still doing the tour, so about $2,000 will be going to the Dumas and the Cabbage Patch, with most of it to the Dumas, because they've had about 225 visitors with us, and the Cabbage Patch with 108. And the other thing that did help is we had a full-time girl we were able to hire at the hotel, so that really worked out really well. And again, working with the Mining Museum, the trolley tours, the Uptown walking tour, I mean, it's been a real fun thing to do. And an example of how it's benefiting Uptown is I have 4 people coming in from Missoula Friday, and they're all excited to spend an hour with me in the Dumas, if you can believe that. But, you know, those people are going to have to buy lunch or get gas somewhere in town, so everybody benefits from it. So again, I thank you very much, and if you have any questions, I'm sure open for it.
Any questions for Mr. Ackerman? Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
up. And keep up the great work with your business.
Thank you.
Next on the list is the World Museum of Mining. Do we have a representative from the World Museum of Mining? Here you are. I think we all know you, but if you'll give us your name and address, please, for the record.
Is this on? Jeanette Koff, 48 Z-Bar-T. I'm over in Whitehall, actually. So we were granted $1,200 for an event brochure. Unfortunately, we were able to just start it. It was based on the completion of the pavilion, which technically is not done yet, but it is finally done enough to where we can take pictures. So the photographer was supposed to come out a few weeks ago, but then health issues arose. So the graphic designer, John Wick at 5518, has the information, is starting the layout. The pictures will be taken, actually the photographer's coming out tomorrow to take the pictures. We were hoping to have the pavilion done in April and the brochure completely done in June. Pavilion's still not done, but we're able to move forward now. So it'll be done probably around the end of November. Our goal was to really try to recruit people for 2022 anyway with this event brochure. And so we're still on track for that, just behind a little bit. So it'll still happen, the money will still be spent, it just isn't yet.
Any questions for Jeanette? Very good, thank you so much.
Thanks, you guys, have a good evening.
Our next organization is the Montana Gala Cultural Society. Do we have anybody here to represent them? Doesn't look like it, okay. All right, moving along, the Friends of Urban Forestry Board. See if I got this on here. I talked to Charlie O'Leary today. He's the chairman of that. And he said here that he was reporting to the council that the Urban Forestry Board, they ordered tree grates. That was the purpose of their funding. And the tree grates are on order and in production. They're having a issue with getting things done, like that seems to be the way things are with about everything at the moment on materials and goods. But as soon as they get them in the ground, they will pay the manufacturing company and report back to council. So we'll get a report from them sometime in the near future once the money is spent. But that's the problem right now, is they have these tree grates ordered. I believe there's 20 of them. They have all the locations already organized and ready to roll, but they're waiting for the tree grates to be done. So we will await their final report later this year. Any questions about that? All right, the next one is Let's Recover Butte project. Do we have anybody here to represent that group? Apparently not. So, all right, the next one is the Mother Lode, and I see we have Ms. Dodge, the director.
Good evening, I'm Jocelyn Dodge. I live at 114 Waldron, and like they say, a picture always talks about 1,000, says 1,000 words, so I'm going to show you the pictures of our project. We were awarded $9,000 to do a project to repair, replaster, and paint the proscenium arch, and you can go to the next one, at the Mother Lode Theater, along with doing some work to rehabilitate the stage floor and also replace the orchestra pit. You can go to the next one. So we did complete the proscenium repair in March. We had Dave Amundsen come over from Missoula. They did finish that. You can go on to the next picture. And what we were doing was to repair all the plaster work and all of the damage that had been done over the years. You can see that on the top pieces, they got that replastered, repainted, and if you go to the next one, we also were replacing these corners down below, and to the next one, and then to protect those corners in the future, we had the contractor put in metal corner braces to be able to protect us for the years from that plaster, so we were really fortunate. It did get done a little bit ahead of schedule, didn't take us as long, so we were really happy about that. On to the next one. The next piece of this, you can now see what the completed arch and the pillars look like in that proscenium. Made a really big difference in the looks of the theater and how it'll be presented, which we start our series next Tuesday, which I'm sure you all have your tickets for, or the Kingston True on Saturday night. If you go to the next piece of the project, which was part of the whole ask for us, is to replace that orchestra pit cover. We did select a contractor. We had to apply for some additional grants. We didn't get the first grant we were hoping for, but we do have a contractor, and that is scheduled to be put in place in December. So we will have that project completed by the end of the summer. The next one is just the quick budget that we had talked about. The $9,000, we had originally asked for $15,000. We did make up the difference out of donations to the theater by the patrons in the community, so we were really happy about that. And we're on schedule for the rest of it. We did end up paying an extra $5,000 for the orchestra pit cover as well because of the price of materials went up, and we are paying for that as well from our donation funds. So I thank you very much, and you will be seeing another grant.
Excellent. Any questions for Jocelyn? Well done. Thank you. The next organization that received funding this year was the Spirit of Columbia Gardens. Do we have anybody representing the Columbia Gardens? Okay, I take that as a no. All right, Joe, you're up, BLDC.
All right, good evening. My name is Joe Willow. I'm the Executive Director for the Butte Local Development Corporation and Headwaters RC&D, the two economic development organizations serving Butte and southwestern Montana. I'll be very brief. Number one, thank you guys for your continued support of the Economic Development Mill Levy. We certainly appreciate it and have been able to do a pretty diverse range of economic development programs over the years. Last year we applied and were awarded $7,500 to do mini grants to businesses throughout the community. The impacts of COVID were particularly bad for a lot of our uptown businesses, a lot of our small businesses in town, particularly retail and restaurants. And we worked with the Montana Standard to do a matching grant program. So we divided the $7,500 15 ways. That led to a $500 grant to each successful business. The Standard kicked in another $500, so each business received $1,000 of advertising. And of the 15 grants we awarded, 13 of the 15 grants have executed on their contract. One of the ones that did not was the M&M, and that's obviously understandable. The other one actually just came under contract to get theirs done last week. And more than anything, it was a pretty diverse group of applicants. I think we were actually able to fund most of everyone that applied, but we did have to turn a few away. And it came at a time during COVID when it was really necessary. So thanks to your guys' support, some businesses definitely got some additional help in a time of need. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. And the next we have is High Ore Ceramics, and we did receive a letter from Zhao. She is the gal that does the ceramics, and I think most of us got that. I believe Barb sent a copy of this to everybody, but they were going to have a ceramics class, a remote ceramics class, and they were able to use some of the funding for purchasing of a clay, but advertising of the kits, they hadn't been released because there was a health issue this year, apparently. They anticipate to complete this before the end of this year, and once they complete it, they would like to email us with their update and a final review of the project. So we will give them an opportunity to complete that project and get back to us. And next we have Alpha Technology. Do we have anyone here representing Alpha Technology? And if you'll just let us know who you are and where you live. Thank you.
Hi, I'm just going to talk real quick and thank you. I'm Jack Skinner. I'm the president of Alpha Technology. I'm a professor at Montana Tech, and just thanks for the support. She'll tell you what we're doing, and if you have questions, I can help answer them too. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. You've been really supportive of us at Alpha Tech. So I'm Jessica Andriolo. I'm senior technical staff at Alpha Technology. Over the years, we've talked to you guys about two different technologies. You can go forward. So one is an on-demand wound care technology where we can functionalize bandages and treat soldiers in the field. We can put these in EMT situations. Ideally, we want them in hospitals. You can keep going. Keep going. Just go. Keep going. Try to be quick. So we basically took a device that's normally large in a laboratory and turned it into a handheld device that can be deployed anywhere. Can go. So we can put these on all sorts of things. The second technology, you can skip this one, and then the next technology is an antiviral compound that we've done a ton of work on. It's an antiviral additive that's completely safe and really, really effective on a bunch of cell lines that we've tested so far. You can go. keep going, keep going. And so what we really requested for this time with the Economic Development Fund was funding for laboratory studies. So studies on animals that would allow us to get through the FDA and actually get these two technologies approved. So you can skip ahead. And so what we've done so far with the money that we got with the on-demand wound care technology, right now our lawyers are working. This technology is really of interest globally. And so right now we really have to work to identify how our device is different from anything else and really protect a global patent on this. And so that's what we're focusing on right now. As far as the antiviral compound goes, we've completed rabbit studies, which we're looking at HPV warts. So our antiviral compound has been classified by NIH as highly active on 3 different strains of HPV. And so we were testing them on rabbits, and we are still waiting. So the technicians essentially collect all their data and then assemble it and give it back to us. And so those studies are complete, and we're just waiting on those results. The other thing, since then, we've really created a close relationship with NIH because of how well this stuff works. And so it's also been determined to be moderately active against Cytomegalovirus, which is a lifelong virus. It's less harmful than even herpes is, but it's been classified as moderately active against that virus as well. And then the other thing that we've been doing, which is really exciting, is that Alphatech signed a letter of intent with the Praxis Center. So we'll be working with the Praxis Center to actually plan and construct laboratory space. And we'll move in there into the, it's like a, what do you call it, a business incubator, a business incubator. And so we'll be working with them on that. The letter of intent also includes responsibilities. So I work as a research associate and adjunct professor at Montana Tech. Jack is department head and a professor at Montana Tech, and so we're also going to be working to facilitate this relationship between the Montana University system and the Praxis Center. So that's really exciting, and those are kind of our updates. If you have any questions, we'll answer those for you.
Any questions? Very exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank everyone for being so patient with us. Thanks, Jake, for having to wait this long in the evening. And we have, of course, last but not least, we have Mr. Everett representing Main Street Butte. Main Street Uptown Butte.
Madam Chair.
Oh, excuse me. Yes. Hello, Pat.
Pat, we need to get Pat.
Did you want to did you want to speak about something, or?
He was Let's Recover Butte.
I'm sorry?
He's Let's Recover Butte.
He's the Let's Recover Butte.
Gotcha, okay.
You got here before me,
So, okay, Pat, Let's Recover Butte project. I probably wasn't loud enough. You all know Pat, he's got the,
My name is Pat Mohan, and 1809 Howard is my living arrangements, but my
right
501...
in the microphone.
My name is Pat Mohan. My living home is 1809 Howard, but soon to be 108 if my wife gets a hold of this. But we've been very successful in stabilizing the buildings and making it safe. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, Butte High had 80 students overnight without cell phones, and they made it through safely, so that was one of the big pluses. But the buildings are starting to get stabilized, and that's where the money comes in for the material and stuff like that. And it's like a game of marbles. You move one thing, and then you got everything else going on. But I'd like to thank you very much for
All right.
your cost.
Thank you. Keep up the good work. All right. Last but not least, George Everett, Main Street Uptown. And we have 3 projects here, and I'm sure we did get your report in the mail or online. Thank you for that.
Well, that about wraps it up, I guess. No, I
You
want
need to make sure
any
we read it.
questions too, but I'm George Everett, Executive Director of Main Street Uptown Butte at 66 West Park Street, Suite 201. I live at 943 Caledonia Street on the Upper West Side in District 11. I want to start off by just saying thank you to the council for the support we received. We were very appreciative that we received 3 grants in this cycle. One was for the Montana Folk Festival. The bulk of it, $13,500, was for the Folk Festival, which at February we had pretty good indication that we weren't going to be able to have the festival last year because of COVID. And so we looked ahead and said, what can we do to prepare for when it can come back? And so we requested help with staging, like Motherlode did, but this is for portable staging, which we were able to purchase, and that's some Wenger staging that is now located with the Civic Center. They keep it there, they use it for events throughout the year, and we will have it when we bring the festival back in 2022. It was mostly, if you know where the Copper Street stage is, that's staging to replace some failing staging that we had there. So that's $9,000 of that. The Copper Star Christmas Wish Fund, we received $1,000 for that, and that is a project we've done 2 or 3 years in a row, I think it's 3, where we invite people to come to the courthouse and make a wish on the copper star that was on the top of the Christmas tree, Capitol Christmas tree. Montana Resources donated that, and then it was displayed at the Montana Folk Festival the year after that, and then it was then brought to the courthouse, and that's on display as you come into the rotunda. And what we did was just invited people to come, make a wish on the star, and then put their wish, write it down if they want with their contact information in boxes that we would hope to put into the chief executive's office again in November. And so we can collect wishes from people from Butte. The only stipulation is that they have to be wishes for someone else. And there are limitations, you know, Packer tickets, Xbox. We're not going to go that far, but we have done some that are power bills that help people buy Christmas presents for their families or things like that. So that's something that we hope to, so we haven't expended any of that yet. That will be before the middle of December, that'll be spent. With the Uptown Civic Improvement Fund, we received $3,500, and we have spent money on painting, graffiti, and also on window repair, but we still have money in that fund that we have available if businesses have issues with vandalism. We do this to augment community enrichment, who they're taking care of things like public structures, park garage, things like that. This is if a business owner has somebody break their window or graffiti their building, they can get a hold of us for help with. What we found was that they usually, prosecuting someone for doing something like this, they usually don't get any kind of compensation, and they have to eat the deductible for their insurance payment. So this is a help to the businesses to say, please don't despair. You know, we want to help you stay in business, and the biggest one we helped this year so far was derailed bikes on Broadway. They had a robbery where they smashed the window and stole a bike. We couldn't help them with the bike, but we helped them to repair the window, Quilisi Glass. We hire a local business to do that, and same with graffiti. If it's you know, we're buying paint from Sherwin-Williams and other stores that sell paint, brushes, materials to be able to do that. So that we will continue to do. We match that money. We match the Copper Star Wish Fulfillment Fund, and we also are going to match with the Folk Festival to the tune of about 700, well, I would say 800,000 this year. We've already talked to a few people, and the prices are going up for a lot of things, but we are intending, despite the current spike in COVID cases, we think things will be in a position in next July that we can hold the festival safely. We will have COVID precautions if we need them, but we're at 70, we're getting close to 80% before the end of October with the first shot, and things are looking better nationally, although Montana made the CBS Evening News tonight as the most COVID cases in the country, #1. Yay. So we're just hoping that we get on the other side of the curve and it gets past us, and we're hoping that people get vaccinated as soon as they can if they haven't already. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about any of these.
No questions, George. Thank you so much for everything your group does.
And please pass along my thanks to Charlie O'Leary for sending it in by mail. He could have been standing right back there.
Okay.
Coming up next.
Okay. All right. I think I've covered everybody. I believe that's everyone on the list. And I don't know, I was going to ask Barb if she can contact the Gaelic Society or the Spirit of Columbia Gardens and see if they can come before us at another date. So, okay. Anything else about this particular communication? All right. Moving along. Section 2, Communications 1, item communication number 2021-131. Ed Lester, Butte-Silver Sheriff, requesting Council Commissioners' concurrence and authorization for the Chief Executive to sign the MOU between Butte-Silver and the Southwest Montana Drug Task Force. Sheriff Lester told me again today that we are holding this in advance as he awaits the proper language that he wanted in the MOU. Item 2 is communication number 2021-299. Tristan Thomas, residing in Butte, Montana, requesting Council of Commissioners to authorize Tristan Thomas to purchase the following property located at 2422 Pine Street, Butte, Montana, 59701. We are awaiting a survey. I believe that is still under advisement in the Land Sales Department. Item 3 is communication number 2021-335. Michael and Kelly Ann Hoven, 241 Williams Street, Walkerville, requesting Council Commissioners' authorization to purchase vacant land currently owned by Butte-Silver. The land they are hoping to acquire includes 1.06 acre parcel and a segment of another 10 acre tract. Again, that is being held for a survey, so we'll hold that in advance. Item 4, communication number 2021-351. Hannah Van Wetter, Foothold co-founder, CEO, requesting Council Commissioners' consideration to sell the city-county vacant lot at the corner of 350 East Granite Street, legally described as Thornton Addition, South 13, Township 3 North, Range 8 West, Block 3, Lot 12, Moonlight Addition, with 10 feet of Lot 1, Block 7. And we are holding that in abeyance. I believe that is now in the Land Sales Committee, and I don't think they meet until next week. So communication number 2021-423, Tina Master, Discovery House Program Director, requesting Council of Commissioners for their concurrence to make a presentation on September 15th, 2021, per J.P. Gallagher's request. We did have that presentation, so Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to place communication 2021-423 on file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place communication 2021-423 on file. Would everyone please vote? Or is there anything on the question? Would everyone please vote? Would anyone care to change their vote? Come on, here we go. Would the clerk please record the vote?
11 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item 6, communication 2021-436. Dylan Pipinich, Assistant Planning Director, requesting Council Commissioners for their concurrence to hold a public hearing on September 22nd, 2021 to hear public comment on zone change application rezone 21-000-003. And we did reschedule that for last week, so we did have that public hearing. Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to place communication 2021-436 on file.
Second.
We have a motion to place communication 2021-436 on file. Anything on the question? Would everyone please vote? Would the clerk please record the vote?
11 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item 7, communication number 2021-446, Charlie Brown, 10 North Dixon Street, Anaconda, Montana, requesting Council of Commissioners approval to purchase land located on the 800 to 900 block of North Idaho Street. I would have it surveyed and then have it legally described as within the boundaries of the Raven addition. I would pay for the survey and the market value of the land to build a single-family residence. This is being held in the Land Sales Committee, so we'll hold that in abeyance. Item 8, communication number 2021-447, Dan Dennehy, Butte-Silver Office of Emergency Management Director, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to allow the request for proposals be opened at the Council's regular meeting on October 6, 2021 regarding the Public Safety Software Computer-Aided Dispatch Records Management, RFP. We did have that RFP opening, so Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to place communication 2021-447 on file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place communication 2021-447 on file. Is there anything on the question? Would everyone please vote? Would anyone care to change their vote? Would the clerk please record the vote?
11 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item 9, communication number 2021-448. Pat Holland, Government Building Manager, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to allow the request for proposals be opened at the Council's regular meeting on October 6, 2021, regarding the Mother Lode Theater Fire Suppression and Annunciation System. We decided to place this on file as we await another communication in the future. So at this time, I would ask Commissioner Frederickson to make a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to place communication 2021-448 on file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place communication 2021-448 on file. Is there anything on the question? Would everyone please vote? Would anyone care to change their vote? Would the clerk please record the vote?
11 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item 10, communication number 2021-452, Mark Neary, Public Works Director, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to schedule a bid opening for October 13th, 2021 for the Mercury Street rebuild. This project will rebuild Mercury Street from Shields to Arizona. We had that bid opening this evening. Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to place communication 2021-452 on file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place communication 2021-452 on file. Is there anything on the question? Would everyone please vote? Would anyone care to change their vote? Would the clerk please record the vote?
11 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item 11, communication number 2021-486, Dana Barnicoat, U.S. EPA Region 8 Montana Community Involvement Coordinator, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to do a presentation on October 13th, 2021, regarding potentially affected areas caused by a suspected solvent plume from Unique Cleaners located at 345 South Main Street, Butte, Montana. We just had that presentation. Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to place communication 2021-486 on file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place communication 2021-486 on file. Is there anything on the question? Would everyone please vote? Would the clerk please record the vote?
11 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item 12, communication 2021-490. Karen Burns, Community Development Director, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence for 10 of the recipients of the 2020-2021 Economic Mill Levy monies to give a presentation on Wednesday, October 13th, 2021. We just had that event, I'll call it that. Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to place communication 2021-490 on file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place communication 2021-490 on file. Anything on the question? Would everyone please vote? Anyone care to change their vote? Would the clerk please record the vote?
11 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. At this time, I would call for any public comment on any public matter not on tonight's agenda. Unless they're invisible, I don't see anybody out there. So at this time, is there anything else to come before us this evening? Thank you all for everything, your work and your questions. And I would just ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Good night, everyone. Thank you, IT, for your work on that one.